He was absolutely mobbed when he came and walked the streets in central Beirut in an area called Jemazy, which has been one of the worst damaged by this blast. It's a very famous street full of bars and restaurants and now unrecognizable. And he walked among the people, and crowds, throngs trying to push it in and speak to him. And they were shouting chants from the protest movement at the end of last year and early this year. They were shouting, the people want the downfall of the regime. They were shouting, Michel Aoun, who's the president who Macron had just met with, Michel Aoun must go. He's a criminal. He's a terrorist. And they were pushing up, and Macron was hugging them. He was shaking hands with them, and they were saying things to him, like one woman said to him, please don't give them any of our money, these criminals. We don't trust them. We don't trust them to give us the aid. And he looked at her and he said, I know you don't. And he was really interacting. And I spoke to a couple of young people who were there afterwards, and one of them said to me, that man came and in 15 minutes, he was more of a leader than any of our leaders have been. Not one politician has been here and walked on the streets with us. And this man came and did it for us. So people very pleased that he came and feeling that the French do care and that there will be international help, but also desperately saying we do not trust the politicians here to distribute the aid appropriately. Please don't give it to them, don't put it in their hands. And graffiti in several areas after he left saying things like, Macron, help us, not them. Don't give those criminals €1.
And at the same time, the investigation is moving forward. At least 16 port and customs officials have been detained. But Leila, that's unlikely to quell any of the anger we're seeing on the streets, is it?
It is. So this is one of the problems, almost immediately when it was discovered that this explosion had been because of this ammonium nitrate in a warehouse at the port. Low-level port officials were all put under house arrest. And when I say low-level, what I mean is not people in government, so people running the port. But of course, this is a problem in the system of governance, because we can see that for the last 6 years, this stuff has sat there, and multiple times the head of the port and the head of customs have shown evidence that letters were sent to the judiciary, to the Prime Minister's office. A report was sent as recently as December 2019 saying this thing was a ticking time bomb and something had to be done. Successive governments have just ignored it. So while it's easy to point the finger at the people who directly run the port, this was elevated to superiors and nothing happened. And many people on the street saying this is basic government negligence. Our government hasn't cared about us for a long time, and this is just the most extreme example of that. And yesterday, the Parliament moved, there was fury, but it was channeled into huge crowds of people, hundreds and hundreds of people picking up brooms, spades, coming together and moving through the streets, starting to clean up and trying to rescue anyone they can still. Volunteer organizations are going through and trying to get people out of the rubble, but very little sign of the authorities, of the army out on the streets. It really is just civilians trying to dig through the rubble here. But in the evening, the rage came to a peak, and there were protests again in downtown Beirut, and immediately the security forces used tear gas on wounded protesters to disperse them. That's unlikely to go down well with international donors.